Right, thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to all of you. It was indeed with great interest I listened to the previous panel and also what they said at the very last question. I don't know if Norway has all the answers, but hopefully you can relate to what they said in what I am about to present to you. I would like to thank IATA for inviting me and give me this opportunity to share with you some of the Norwegian government policies in the transition to a green aviation sector. Cooperation with industry and other stakeholders is key for a successful progress in making aviation more sustainable. I have noted the considerable work carried out by IATA, taking leadership, raising awareness among airlines, given the environmental challenge the global aviation sector is facing. I have also noted the ambitious reduction targets that aviation industry has put on themselves. It is indeed necessary to accelerate the pace towards implementation of new and green technologies. Here we see in many cases that what is good for the environment is also good for the business case. I would like to pay tribute to IATA for the efforts made to establish ICAO CORSIA and prepare airlines in different parts of the world for the new global market-based mechanism. CORSIA will be a significant step, a welcome step forward for the international aviation sector in taking responsibility for its CO2 emissions. I'm invited today to focus on Norway's vision on sustainable aviation. Please allow me to set the scene first and say a few words about the overall transport perspective. A main goal for the Norwegian government's transportation policy, which includes civil aviation, is to ensure connectivity within a particular region and between regions. The transport system should be safe, accessible to all users, environmentally friendly, and be in line with Norway's goals for greenhouse gas emission reductions. Emissions from Norwegian transport sector accounts for approximately 60% of the non-ETS emissions and about 5% of the ETS emissions, and ETS, of course, is emission trading scheme, as you all know. These 5% that are ETS emissions, they include, as you're aware, aviation. So as you can see, the transport sector is key to achieve Norway's emission reduction targets. The Norwegian government is pursuing many different policies and is implementing a variety of measures to ensure a significant reduction in transport sector emissions. For instance, to increase the use of zero-emission vehicles and ships, increase the use of public transport, and the use of sustainable biofuels. In Norway, the policies promoting electric cars have been a particular success. From January to October 2018, zero-emission passenger cars have had a market share of about 29%. Almost one-third of new cars sold in 2018 has been battery or fuel cell electric. So how could this come about? Much of the answer lies in the incentives given by the central government and local authorities to promote the use of electric cars in terms of taxation, free or reduced public parking fees, reduced toll road fees, yes, we do have them in Norway, use of bus lanes, etc. We also have a CO2 tax and road tax levied on fossil fuels used by vehicles. We also see astounding developments in our domestic maritime car ferry sector. By 2021, we expect that about a third of Norwegian car ferries will have batteries installed. And much of this development has come about because of ambitious climate criteria in public tenders. Now, these examples illustrate what is possible. It also tells us that maybe we can learn something from other sectors and other transport modes when we take measures in the aviation sector. Although the measures cannot be mirrored as such. There can be something to learn of the importance of giving incentives, as we also heard earlier today. Now, turning to how we approach the aviation sector. As I'm sure you're all well aware, Norway is a country located on the northern outskirts of Europe, with challenging topography and long distances both domestically and when going abroad. The Norwegian economy is highly dependent on foreign trade, and Norwegian businesses are, of course, very much oriented to the European and global markets. These businesses are very much depending on solid and reliable air connectivity. In Norway, aviation has a key role in our public transport infrastructure, and in addition to business, it is also essential for regional settlement, public health services, tourism, education, sports, culture. A few years ago, Aviation, that is our main state-owned airport operator and air navigation service provider, made an analysis of the social impact of aviation in Norway. The analysis concluded that 2 out of 3 Norwegians have access to an airport within a 1-hour journey, and 99.5% of the population can manage a visit to the capital in Oslo and arrive back home on the same day. In some parts of Norway, where aviation also is essential for intra-regional public service obligation transportation, the average number of flights per inhabitant per year is very high, reaching 7 to 8 flights. So with the increased flying and the steady growth we have been seeing over many years in the aviation sector comes the question of emissions. Emissions per passenger kilometer are reduced by more than 50% over the last 20 years. But due to the growth of the sector and the increased number of flights, the total CO2 emissions have increased. In Norway, both government and industry take a broad range of measures to mitigate the CO2 emissions in the aviation sector, in line with the ICAO basket of measures. Some more in the early stages, some more advanced. Technology development, operational improvements, improved air traffic management and infrastructure use, alternative fuels, and economic measures are categories of measures that could be mentioned. Now, what I see as a strength in Norway is a very close and well-functioning cooperation between transport authorities and the environment authorities in how we approach sustainable aviation on the government side. So, what do we, from the government perspective, see as the most important environmental measures in aviation? Airspace efficiency improvements, coupled with optimization of landings and takeoffs, are important measures in our joint efforts to save fuel burn and the environment. Norway has, alongside with other Nordic and Baltic countries, implemented a truly free route airspace, allowing flights to operate a user-preferred route through the combined airspace. The North European free route airspace was fully operational from spring 2017, and geographical extensions are being pursued primarily to the west. Although existing route structures were already to a large extent straight and optimized, free route airspace in a large volume airspace represents the optimum solution from the airspace user's point of view, allowing them to take all relevant factors into consideration when planning and executing their flights. Improved navigation technology facilitates more accurate and flexible approach and departure procedures. Since Aviation commenced the project for satellite-based approaches at Oslo Airport, several thousand curved approaches have been carried out. The advantage of these approach procedures is that flights can pass around densely populated areas close to the airport, reducing noise for the airport's neighbors. In addition, aircraft can fly shorter routes and thereby reducing their fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. This is cheaper for the airlines, which adds positively to the business case. In 2017, the pilot project on curved approaches was completed, and the procedures were approved by the Norwegian Civil Aviation Authority, so that they are available to anyone who would like to apply for approval. Procedures for curved approaches have been implemented at several Avinor airports, and several more airports will implement such procedures in the years to come. Altogether, Avinor operates 44 airports. We also have a few others outside the Avinor network, so it's quite an amount. Aircraft technologies are evolving very fast. We have heard that earlier today. The development of electric aircraft is high on the agenda in Norway. The government has, in its Jeløya Declaration, and that is the policy document on which the current government bases its work, highlighted the importance of moving forward on this file. Our former Minister of Transport even went on a diet to prepare himself for the first official inaugural electric flight in Norway in a two-seater aircraft that he attended earlier this year. So, according to industry and manufacturers, commercial flights with small electric aircraft, 10, 12, 19 passengers, on short distances could be feasible from 2025. This aircraft size would fit perfectly into the smallest regional airports in Norway. Moreover, we understand that Airbus, Rolls-Royce and Siemens are working on an aircraft project with the aim of flying 100 passengers, 1,000 kilometers in 2030. This is just one example. It seems to be widely recognized that electric aircraft has the long-term potential to be a game changer on short-haul flights in terms of reduced CO2 emissions and noise. Again, adding to the business case of airlines and having the potential to make the businesses in the long term less dependent on fossil fuels. But there are other benefits. The reduced operating costs and increased flexibility electric aircraft could bring creates new opportunities for the Norwegian regional network of small airports with runways as short as 800 meters. At most of these small airports, the regular traffic consists of public service obligation flights. With the introduction of electric aircraft, perhaps we could get an improved offer and better connectivity for the PSO money spent. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, Norway has had success with its policy on giving incentives to the use of electric cars. When developing electric aviation, we need concrete policies and incentives adapted to the aviation sector. The Norwegian government wishes to encourage the development of aviation based on electricity and has tasked Avinor to develop a program for the introduction of electric aircraft in Norway, in close cooperation with the Norwegian CAA. It is expected that the program will be finalized sometime next year. In this program, Avinor and the CAA will make proposals on how to develop policies and take measures enabling the introduction of electric aircraft in Norway for commercial aviation. Another path we are pursuing is increased use of jet biofuels in the aviation sector in Norway, as we see electrification realistically as more of a long-term development. The focus on the use of jet biofuels is in line with ICAO policies as discussed quite recently at the second ICAO conference on aviation and alternative fuels in Mexico in October last year. Following a broad public consultation in Norway over the summer this year, the government has decided to impose those selling aviation fuels at Norwegian airports a quota obligation, a blending mandate of 0.5% advanced jet biofuels starting from 2020. As far as we know, this is the world's first of its kind. An exemption is foreseen for the Norwegian Armed Forces, since biofuels have not yet been certified for the use of the aircraft of the Armed Forces. The comments that we received in the public consultation process on the quota obligation were particularly interesting reading. Among topics addressed in the consultation were pricing, availability, and market issues globally for jet biofuels. I can also mention to you that Avinor already from 2016, as many of you might know, has blended in jet biofuels in the hydrant system at Oslo Airport, thereby proving that no separate distribution channels were necessary. And the project was in 2017 extended to cover Bergen Airport. I will now turn to economic measures. Norway very much welcomed and strived to achieve the adoption of the ICAO CORSIA at the 39th ICAO Assembly in 2016. Together with the other 43 member states of the European Civil Aviation Conference, Norway will join the mechanism from the start of the voluntary phase in 2021. As a member state of the European Economic Area, which comprises the 28 EU states, as well as the 3 EFTA states, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, Norway is part of the EU emission trading scheme. EU ETS covers about 80% of emissions stemming from the Norwegian aviation sector. Now, I'm fully aware that taxation is no favorite topic among airlines, but for the record, I would like to mention that Norway has environmental taxes on domestic aviation for CO2, NOx, as well as SOx. In October this year, the Norwegian government appointed a committee with the task of looking into different aspects relating to globalization of aviation. One of the questions the committee will address is what measures should be taken to ensure that the environmental targets of the aviation sector can be met. The committee is chaired by Mr. Sverre Kvale, former CEO of Avinor. Some of you might know him. The committee's report will be published in December next year and will be of high value when new environmental measures are to be designed in my country. So, to sum up, the benefits that aviation sector is creating is widely recognized, and the sector is growing fast. We see that other sectors and other modes of transport are decarbonizing. Aviation must do its part, and as I have already mentioned, there is often a win-win situation, as it could be good for both the environment and for the business case of airlines. As you have seen, the Norwegian government is pursuing different policies to reach the goal of a more sustainable aviation sector. And finally, I would like to pass on greetings from my minister, who unfortunately was not able to attend here today. So, thank you very much for your attention.